Good morning, welcome back to Morning at 10 TV, and today we were talking about the local council elections that we are counting down to. They're scheduled to take place next week on the 10th of July. Are you ready? What are your views on this? Just the other day we were having the Women Council elections, and the Electoral Commission came out to say that they experienced quite low voter turnout, and we feel that this is the reason as to why the 10th of July will be a public holiday, just to give me and you the time to turn out and vote. Be part of this. And so to talk about that from a political perspective, we have Dr. Kakungulu Mayambala, who is a political analyst and also an associate professor of law at Makerere University. Thank you so much for making time.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. It's been 17 years since we had the local council elections here in Uganda. 17 years. From a political perspective, why has it taken that long, and why are we realizing that this post is important for, Uganda? And that's why we're seeing this now. Why is it important? 17 years, we've been surviving. Why now?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, the local council election is very important in that the citizens are free to vote. Even the residents, they also vote.
Right.
And most of the issues in the area are handled by these local council leaders. And so it's a very important activity for them to participate. There are many reasons why the elections could not be held for the last 17 years. But as of now, these elections are going to be held, and the people are going to have new leaders. In fact, some of the leaders had died, others lost interest in the jobs,
right.
Their job as local council leaders, and so this is a big opportunity for the residents to have new leaders and to express their will.
Express their will.
Yes.
You said that it's taken us 17 years because of many factors. Are you in a position to spell out some of these factors?
Some of the factors why these local council elections could not be held were, one, the resources, because initially it was meant to be by secret ballot, which
right.
was too expensive. But now that the rules were changed and it's going to be by open ballot, lining behind your favorite candidate, so it's going to be less costly. And the other was there were some court cases which were there previously about this kind of election. So as of now, the ground is prepared for these elections to be conducted by the government. Is
it as a result also of now the government has realized that the local council leaders play a major role that we are missing out on for the 17 years that we didn't have them, actively playing their roles? Is it that now they're feeling we really have to have these elections and have these leaders in their posts?
Yes, like there are many government processes and programs right now, all of which require the presence of these local council leaders. For example, we have had the exercise of the national ID, and it was these leaders who were required to verify the applicants for this national ID. There are many government programs, for example, the Operation Wealth Creation and many other government programs, all of which are based on the LC leaders, because they are the ones who are able to identify the residents and to reach out to these people in case of service delivery and such government programs, which are crucial at this stage.
Crucial at this stage. Sir, you said, well, it's been 17 years, and part of the reason as to why we're not having these elections and why we're now going to have them, but still with the quote-unquote barbaric method of voting, which is lining up behind the candidate that you support, is because of lack of financing. Yes. Are we seeing a situation whereby the government did not plan ahead of time to ensure that we have a secret ballot in these particular polls? Or it's a matter of lack of political goodwill, or they just found themselves in a position whereby they really need the local council leaders to help in the dissemination of the different roles at a local level, and now it's like, a knee-jerk kind of reaction that we need to have them now, but we don't have the fundings, so we go the old route. Are we seeing that?
Yeah, to some extent, but you see what the government is doing is they want these elections held.
Right.
Two, they don't seem to have the resources, because these are really widespread elections, because if you're talking about every village or every ward or cell in a municipality or town council, that's a big area. But also the government knows that this kind of voting will be certainly in favor of most of their candidates, because in the countryside, it is for expedience and survival. You would have to be on the government side, because if like you don't vote for the movement candidate, and then this is the candidate through whom the government programs are going to be delivered, it would be like committing suicide, because then you may not get the services. So the government knows that at least for them, this kind of system of voting is going to favor their candidates, and so it's going to save the costs and also favor their candidates.
So that's the reason. It's not just a matter of cost, because you were thinking 17 years, then you should have been able to plan enough, even financially, to provide for a secret ballot. So there is that reason, that caveat.
Yes, it will favor their candidates.
It
certainly
will favor.
Yeah.
Wow, wow. We are going to have these elections across 60,800 polling stations in the different villages across the country. And so just the other day, the day before yesterday, we were having the Women Council elections, and it turned out that there was quite a low voter turnout in these particular villages, and some of the women said that it's as a result of the method of elections, that lining up behind the candidates they support, and they felt like it's gonna be uncomfortable. But before we move on, let's get to hear what they had to say.
Abakyala mujje sawa zino zennyini twatuuse dda, mujje mukebere enkalala zammwe mulonde olunaku olwaleero. Awulidde tegeeza munnaku lyokumpi jangu olonde omukulembeze ogwoyagala munkwata nga nze ndi bwenti teri kigambo tugende tubasome nga bwe bayingira.
nga wetegereza ndagamuntu n'erinnya lye basomye mu kitabo afande tusimba tutya mukama wange tusimba tutya taata tusimba
tugenda kulonda tugenda basoma amannya bwe tusoma erinnya ojja ne ID yo ne tupuruvinga ne tukola ki ne tukukkiriza kati netukuteeka wali kubanga mwina okusooka kusoma nga temunalonda tulinayo okusoma kati musooke mukole ki musimbe mu lines kati kikole mu bwangu twanguyirwe tandika amanyi.
naye bwe ntuuse wano ntuddewo bwe zituuse essaawa 3 ate ne tufuna amawulire nga batugamba nti tugenda kutandika kulonda ku ssaawa 5:05. Kaakati abantu abatudde eri tebamanyi ssaawa mmeka entuufu, era tebamanyi okulonda kugenda kutambula kutya.
Okulonda twandigenze naye kisinza otulemesa abakyala bonna tuli bamanyi bakwano baffe bakukitundu, kati oba otyo ogenda okwesimbako ono nga n'oli akulaba senga bataddewo bubokisi ate si ne tuwandiika amannya kiba kisingako.
So the women are actually cognizant of the fact that the method of voting will cause issues in the villages. They're afraid that I will not go back and still be friends with my neighbor if they saw me support someone they don't support. Do you think, fine, we know that that method of voting is pro the ruling, party, and them, ganging as many votes as possible for them to, pull this to themselves. But don't you think this will act against them? Now that many people know that this is not a friendly kind of method of voting?
Yeah, the method of voting has many issues. The first one is that you have to wait for all the prospective voters to be there before then you count.
Right.
So it requires patience, because somebody may come, maybe they come at 9 a.m., then they come at 11, or others are hoping to come at 2. So you have to wait when slightly the biggest number you expect to turn up is there. So that one is also confusing. The other is that this being a local election, that these people are living together in the same community. Some of them are worried, like, this is my neighbor, this is my relative, so they are worried if I don't vote for him or her, I mean, in this case, her, I don't line behind her, so what will happen? This is my neighbor. So because of that, some could be hesitant and may have just decided to withdraw and not participate in the exercise. So, but most importantly, the issue of government services, service delivery. If you are going to support a candidate who is not NRM, then it becomes very risky for you because the service delivery may be denied to you. And also, if this candidate you are not supporting or you are in the other line goes through, then they've seen you, even all the other voters who are in the other line have seen that you were not for this candidate. When you need services, for example, maybe a letter of recommendation, you may either feel shy yourself to go to this candidate whom you openly didn't support, or you just, the candidate may also feel like that they should not help you because you didn't support them.
We are having currently the nominations for the local council leaders ahead of the 10th of July. The nominations started yesterday and they're going to end today. These particular elections are quite peculiar, and they mean a lot for different people for different reasons, like you said, the ruling party. But we, compared to other elections, we've not seen campaigns being as rigorous, you know, as we are normally used to. Even yesterday still, when we were having the women council elections the day before yesterday, some women actually said that we also didn't turn up because we didn't know these elections are happening. Is it an issue of the Electoral Commission not standing up at 100% in terms of excellence to ensure that they sensitize residents of the different villages of the upcoming elections, civic education? Do you feel they have a thing or two to borrow from the not so successful women council elections that took place?
Yes, I think there were many factors. First of all, because the local council election is all residents are free to participate.
Right.
It is not based on citizenship. So the Electoral Commission or the officers in charge of this had to verify. You had to go and register, and then they verify. So some people didn't go for this verification exercise. So then they just turned up to want to vote, and they could not vote because they had not verified their names. The other was the sensitization was not so much. Some people did not know that this activity was taking place. And this means that the stakes were not so high, because if the stakes are so high, then the turn-up will also be high, because then each voter feels that a candidate has reached out to them and therefore they should go and vote. But if the candidates don't reach out to the voters, then the voters also don't just turn up because there is the election. So there is that need for the voters to turn up. But most importantly, it was the system of voting that led to the low turnout, people fearing that this kind of thing can cause or have a lot of repercussions after the vote.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That was the major issue. Still sticking to campaigns. Yesterday we saw a number of the NRM MP rebels who did not support the age limit bill being sidelined when it comes to the financing that they were supposed to get to just facilitate them campaign ahead of the local council elections on the 10th of July. So 27 were actually discriminated upon, and they did not receive the 3 million shillings that was being given to the rest of them. Why are we seeing this? Is this acceptable, so to speak? Why are we having that kind of discrimination in that one ruling party?
Well, that's interesting, because what happened was that during the age limit debate, these NRM MPs who have been historically referred to as the rebel MPs, when they didn't go by the party position, then the party considered them literally to have left the party. So therefore, the party is not so sure whether they are still part of the party or they are now part of the opposition. So for that reason, the party could have decided not to give them their 3 million and maybe give it to other independent NRM-leaning MPs or candidates or something like that. So because they were not so sure. So the issue of allegiance came in. So that's why probably they were not given the money, because they just recently, last December, they were not on the party side. So I think that's why they were left out.
And is it politically acceptable?
Yeah, it's not right, because they are still, maybe they could have just disagreed with the party only on that particular position, but they are still willing to participate because they've not left the party. But like I've said, they could not be facilitated, because the issue is that when they are given this money, they're the ones who are going to distribute it.
Right.
So they could even be maybe distributing it to their own candidates and not NRM candidates. So the issue of the party structures had to be observed by the people distributing the money.
From a political standpoint, you as a political analyst, we know that the 10th of July will be a public holiday. Do you feel that this will still enable, residents to come out in big numbers? Will it have an effect on the voter turnout?
Yes, I think since it has been declared that 10th July will be a public holiday, if this mobilization is done from now over the weekend up to Monday night and Tuesday morning, I think the voter turnout is likely to be higher compared to what it was within the women council elections. So the people, first of all, they will be home. So it is easy to go around mobilizing them, telling them, please come for the elections. And most likely the number is likely to go up. But still, some of them are likely to hide, or either hide in their gardens or in their houses, or go to another village because of the system of lining up. The lining up is the major challenge. They don't want to be seen to be voting like that way.
Let's talk about the eligibility of the candidates that will stand on that particular day to be voted for. What is this criteria? What is the Electoral Commission looking for to qualify a candidate at 100% for them to stand and get people vote for them? What are the eligibility standards?
The eligibility standards are: 1, residence. You must be a resident of the area because this is a local election. 2, you should be of age, at least 18 years, 21 years and above. The age matters. And then the other is, of course, you should be a registered voter. You should be a registered voter in that locality. Since it's not based on nationality in some of the some of the positions, then you should be a resident of that area. So residence, nationality, and then of course you should be of sound mind. Those are the few requirements, mainly residence, and you should be of the age.
Be of age.
Yeah.
There's that factor that you mentioned of you have to be a nationality, like a citizen of Uganda by whatever means. Don't you feel like this will be discriminatory, especially for the villages that have a big number of refugees? And refugees are people who are not, so to speak, citizens of this particular country. And you see, for example, if you have a village that has a big percentage of refugees, and they feel like a Ugandan will not represent, their wars, their cries to a good percentage. Don't you feel like the eligibility requirements are discriminatory in that regard?
What happens is that with these elections, they are based on small area, like a cell, a ward, a village.
Right.
So if it happens that in that village, maybe the aliens or the refugees or whoever, the residents are the majority, then they are free to get their leader, because this is a local election. So the person they feel will be able to give them the service, to lead them, to mobilize them, then there is the person they are going to vote for. So even if that person was not a citizen, as long as the person is a resident and the majority of the residents feel that he or she is the most capable, then it should be okay with them.
Yeah. So it's possible for someone who is a non-citizen to stand to be as a candidate for this particular elections. Okay, let's go down to the budget of this particular elections. We were being told that this time it's going to cost around 15.7 billion Uganda shillings. From that point, do you feel like we're going to have excellent, you know, kind of execution in all the 60,800 polling stations across the country with that budget? Is it sufficient? Do you feel we're going to have, you know, a repeat of what we saw during the women council elections, or with that 15.7 billion, it's going to be sufficient to have high quality kind of polls, so to speak?
Yeah, I think that most of the costs are mainly in printing of paper materials, balloting, I mean. But for now, all that the Electoral Commission has to do is to transport its officers, and then some little paperwork for nomination, filing of results, and of course the allowances. So I think this budget should be adequate in terms of what is required, unlike the other secret bout where the cost is high. This time it doesn't, even security may not be that needed, because these are people who are going to be just lining up. It's in the open, so people are this side or the other side, and everyone can see that this candidate has won, and there is not likely to be any chaos or riots. So
you feel like security is not an important factor?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Because yesterday that's an issue also that came out. Many people are feeling, because of that fear of someone realizing that I'm supporting someone they don't support, then there might be a possibility of chaos in some polling stations, so to speak. And so there was a question of, will we be secure? Do we have security in place? Don't you feel so?
Yeah, it is. I think the way it's going to be is that right now as it is, unlike in the secret bout where people can maybe take a gift or some offer from another person, for now it is going to be very difficult, because it's going to be open bout. Maybe somebody who has taken something from another candidate maybe would have to just withdraw. So that kind of fear will not be there. Only what will be there is that some voters may decide to withdraw for just personal reasons. They don't want to be seen. Maybe they have a relationship with the other person, or they are, since it's a small community, they don't want to cause that kind of friction. They don't want maybe to vote the neighbor, and the neighbor is in standing, that kind of thing. Otherwise, I think it is going to be largely peaceful.
Largely peaceful.
Yeah.
Moving forward, what next? Do you see a possibility of the next local council elections? Do you see a possibility of them being via the secret ballot? From where you stand?
I think all this will depend on how the government fires, how the ruling party fires in the current elections. If they realize that the system is working for them, then they will maintain it. If a time comes and there's resistance, then they may not, because the issue is not really the money. They can get the money to do the secret bout, but it is largely because they feel that this kind of thing works for them, because in the countryside it is good to be on the side of the government because of the service delivery. Service delivery can be cut off for you if you are not in the good books of the leaders. So it will depend on, one, how the ruling party fires in these elections. If they perform very well, then largely the system of the vote will have contributed, and so they may wish to maintain the status quo.
They may wish to maintain the status quo. What other method can, members of the public use to contest the current constitution, because it's the one that stipulates that it's supposed to be a lining up method of, of polls, of elections, so to speak. What route can the members of the public use to ensure that we have that constitution changed? Because like you're saying, if it favors the ruling party, we'll keep on having it year on, year out. What is the process, so to speak, to contest that current constitution, provision that allows this?
The system of voting was determined by Parliament,
right?
Which is dominated by the ruling party. So if there is to be any change, then all elections in the country are determined by the laws which have been passed by Parliament.
Yes.
So if Parliament passed a law that it will be by lining behind your candidate, then that will be the law. If the voters are not happy, then they have to petition their members of Parliament to change the law so that they can have a secret ballot. And of course, in changing the law, the government argued that they needed this because of the cost. So then any change in the law, whoever will be proposing it has also to propose where the financial aspect will be covered, because the law has to have a certificate of financial implications. So if you are changing the law and it is going to cause a big budget on the side of the government, then the government may refuse. They saying they don't have the money to support that kind of law. So that's what will happen. But just what will be important is how the ruling party fires. If they fire well, they may want to leave the law. If they fire badly, they may want to change the law.
But still the power belongs to the people. The people have the power to petition the members of Parliament to go and change it at the floor of Parliament. But then what's that process of petitioning the members of Parliament? Do they just call the member of Parliament to a meeting? What's the process of the members of the public petitioning the members of Parliament?
What we have is representative democracy.
Right.
So the people's views are heard through their members of Parliament. Of course, a member of Parliament, like it happened in the age limit, can decide to go occasionally against what the voters have told him or her to do. But such a member of Parliament will be, of course, committing political suicide, because then the people may not vote for him or her the next time he or she comes back for the election. But of course, certainly that will be another 5 or 4 years later. So for now, the members of the public can only put pressure on their MPs and hope that the MPs will change the law. But certainly the decision is with the members of Parliament.
The decision is the members of Parliament. As we come to a close, what are your last remarks on this particular elections? As a political analyst, what do you foresee that now we can take caution of, or what results do you think will have come the 10th of July this year?
Yes, what I see about the ERC election is that the ruling party is likely to get more, to retain most of its seats, and remain in a very firm position in terms of its representation. And that will, of course, leave the opposition not in a good shape, because all the coming elections in the later years will be determined by the mobilization skills of these local leaders. And then the government will also be able to use its service delivery through the leaders who have been elected, thereby entrenching itself more in power.
Okay, all right. This is quite interactive, and I do understand that we have a few comments and, comments from the ground, and this will come later on in the show. But before we move on, we're taking a short commercial break, and we'll be back with the same conversation on the local council polls that are set to take place on the 10th of July this year. Stay tuned.